when I joined my like internship originally, I had to do a Zoom meeting with a client, and it was like one of my first days.
Yeah.
And 40 minutes in, it goes, Zoom meeting about to end, and I was just like, we have an hour session. This is not good.
Yeah.
But I was able to navigate it and then got it figured out. But yeah, it just like pops up on you. It's just like 10 minutes. You're like, oh no.
Yeah. Um, Shoot, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. The company that I interviewed for pclub.io, I think I remember telling you about it. The very first time that we ever chatted, I had this set up on an interview.
Yeah.
And not only that, but for some reason my camera on Zoom like zoomed in like right on my face. Like it was literally probably like this close. So she joins. I have a microphone right in my face and headphones on, and it's like this close.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Hey, Jesse." And I'm just sitting there like so embarrassed. And I'm like, I have no clue what's going on. And then to top it off, she was like, "Do you typically use that microphone for sales calls?" And I was like, "I don't have to," or something like that. So every interview since, what I do is I like plug in like this separate cable to my MacBook to this monitor, reconnect the mouse and camera to that adapter.
Yeah, that's what you can't even like just have it out of the frame of window, so it still picks it up.
Well, I could do that. How does that sound?
It sounds like good. You're a little distant, but like say something else.
Like if we were having a conversation, would you wish that I was a
Dude, that'd
little
be
bit
fine.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know then. My only other issue now is just the headset because the PC desktop tower doesn't have um like audio out loud.
What about your like AirPods or something?
Yeah, I the Bluetooth's kind of finicky on unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think if I was gonna have one,
I'd rather have the headphones than
yeah,
the
like I don't think
yeah.
anyone's like I can't believe he joined with over the ear headphones.
Yeah. But for that, you're like, okay, who's doing the interviewing here?
She said, "Can well, I think she still felt like she was on a podcast." I moved on
Yeah.
to the next round of the interview, but it was the zoomed in.
Yeah.
It was almost like I was trying to record like a TikTok and I
Yeah.
like had to, yeah,
That's funny, dude.
I know.
All right. So to kick things off, how do we feel about reincarnation?
Oh man. I'm glad that you brought topics because I started a notepad for Jesse and Caleb conversations as I hear things throughout the week.
Jesse made the notepad, built it from scratch, chopped down a tree, found a processor,
Amazon Basics, baby.
somehow figured how to do the lines on the paper.
That was the easy part. Um, Reincarnation. Yeah, definitely thought about it before. I think we've talked about it. I mean, my first thought, and I kind of got this from like Revu in a way. I feel like just like the way of thinking, my mind is immediately like, okay, it's immediately delving into like the spiritual realm. Like you can't really confirm or deny it.
Sure.
That's my first thought process. I don't know that I've thought about it in a long time, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about on and off, and I was listening to a podcast this week that mentioned the idea. Um,
Can I ask what podcast?
it was Jerry with
Oh, okay.
what was the guy's name? The guy who did the he was the director of the Christian Christian what are they called? Christian spiritualism cult or something.
Scientology.
No, it's like Christian something. Like there's
Okay.
another word there. Um, David Holthouse.
I just want to jot this one
Christian
down.
Christian House. Yeah, it's episode 2129. It's good. They talk about, you know, the cult stuff. They talk about the guy actually went to Ukraine during like this battle, so it was interesting hearing his like first hand
Oh wow.
account about that. Talking about DMT experiences. So it was overall like pretty good podcast. Uh, but yeah, so he personally subscribes to the idea of um reincarnation and karma, and I've like thought about it a lot, and particularly I think it's interesting being a Christian and believing in that because a lot of people are like skeeved out by that. You know, they're like, oh, you can't. When in reality, I would argue that there is like biblical context to support the potential for reincarnation. Like, I would never go out and say like 100% I believe that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say like I have a strong enough faith in there to like argue it as my personal conviction. But I can see it being a possibility, and like I'm more inclined to believe that it's a possibility than not.
Yeah. I think as soon as you break free of feeling like, well, nope, I'm strictly looking at things from like a scientific, repeatable observation about the
Mhm.
way the world works and all that, doors open up, like
Yeah,
genuinely. And I don't put that as something that's too far fetched. I mean,
yeah.
I think about like we've described this. I don't know if I've necessarily like thought as deeply about it as I once did, but it makes me think about the idea that life is the universe observing itself through
Hmm.
all living things and even non-living things, maybe, who knows, for our lack of ability to understand most things, like with our like human limitations. So who's to say that, the people that were alive back then aren't essentially just, we're all like reborn because we're all part of the same God, the same
Yeah,
universe.
yeah.
So we're
Well,
always reincarnated because we're reincarnating ourselves.
yeah, like one way or another, if we come from like one life source,
Yeah.
whatever religion you subscribe to or like belief system, like ultimately it comes down to that of like we are all one.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know like how like the way I view reincarnation is probably a little different than like how a Hindu would explain reincarnation. And the way I believe it is in alignment with the Christian theology. Um, First and foremost, I'll just very briefly touch on where I think that there is biblical evidence to support the idea, just because I think it's a fair, like there has to be some defense if I'm claiming to be Christian and that.
Yeah.
Um, in the Bible, first and foremost, Jesus ascended. And so we see that life does not end after death. And obviously, Jesus is a very specific figure in the Christian faith that not like everybody is. But the whole point was that there is a afterlife effect, and you can like he ascended. It's different than reincarnation, but he also presented during the ascension process, presented himself as an old man first and foremost, and then a stranger on the beach. Like, so he presented himself as different figures, which a god, right, can do. Like, if there is the one true living God, he could do whatever he wants. However, there was also when Jesus was there, many people asked, "Are you the prophet Elijah?" And Elijah was an older prophet from the Old Testament, and they were waiting for Elijah to reincarnate. So they thought that Elijah was either John the Baptist, who came before Jesus, or Jesus himself. And then they also asked, "Are you Moses?" So there's evidence just in that those questions that the ancient Judaic thought was that at least prophets could reincarnate, specific spiritual beings could reincarnate without them being God. So I think that's really cool. And then the other point the other like evidence that I see is in Enoch. Enoch was the only man who walked and never died because God loved him so much that he just asked him to come with him. So if that is possible, if you're able to not die, I don't see it far-fetched to say that you can then relive. Um, and so that's just a little bit of background evidence of how I inform my thought. But the way I think about it is I believe the God I know as a Christian is all loving, and desires clearly throughout the Old Testament and New. He wants a pathway for every one of his creatures to be reintegrated with him. He wants companionship with us, particularly humans, but I think all life forms. And the God I know has never given up and has made covenants to make sure that even when humans fail, like we have a pathway back. But I think God also has a standard that we have to meet, which is very clear as well. First, it was given in the law of Moses, and then it was given in the form of Jesus. Give me 1 second. I have someone just knocked on the door.
Go ahead, man.
I'll be right back. Hey, I forgot I had a guy come in to pick up a painting, and it was an older gentleman, so he kept me there talking for a minute.
No, it's all good. I could tell it was like almost like a little bit of banter.
Yeah, and I was like, he just kept talking. I was like, all right. Um, but yeah, so I'll finish this here in just like a minute.
Okay.
Um, I pretty much see God as unimpedingly wanting us to have a way back to Him, and I think reincarnation, in a Christian sense, is a way for us to relive this life over and over, to learn what we need to learn, to be able to appreciate God's glory and God's, more importantly, His mercy and grace. And um, they talk about fearing the Lord in Christianity, but that really is reverence. That's not like be afraid of God. That means be reverent to God and live your life in fear of His wrath and mercy, because that is what we are to like obey.
Yeah, and
Um,
reverent means
Reverent is like an awestruck respect. Like it's more than respect. It's like I'm so moved by who or what you are and what you have provided for me that
like I'm just like unwavering.
I'm obedient to you, but
Yeah,
not because I'm obligated, but because like you have given me so much, how could I not be, you know?
yeah. For some reason, the relationship with like a dog and a man, its owner, almost makes me think of that. Like a dog just like
Yeah.
unconditionally loves you. It's a
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a really good example
yeah,
actually. Like just the reverent, like Ruby looks at me
yeah.
almost with reverence, the way she just like follows me around. She's
Right.
just
Like
like,
there's no other option.
yeah, she's like, why would I not literally follow you around, whether you're shitting or like
Yeah.
walking out
Yeah.
back? Like, why would I not be there?
I had a thought pop up during your speech there, and or not the speech, but just like
Yeah,
your
like
thought
speech,
process there.
Jesus.
And I if it's a simple answer, then so be it. We can move on. But I had the thought, what's in it for God?
Yeah. Um, companionship. That's clear from Genesis 1 to like the end of time is that God created us because he could and he wanted fellowship, which I think we as humans experience because we are created in the image of God and the likeness of God. And I don't think that is very like superficial in the sense of like God looks like me, but I think our characteristics come out in our yearning. And so the human yearning, the soul desire, what we were talking about last week of like deep conversations of connectedness with another human being, I think that directly comes from the character of God. God wants fellowship with life. And that's why we were created in the garden to literally live with God in the garden initially.
Mhm. So is God able to absorb the companionship and appreciate the companionship like through the eyes of a human? Because like I can't imagine that like a all powerful God that created it also appreciates and see things the way a human does, or is he able to dumb himself down in a way and see it through the eyes of a human and appreciate it the same way?
I wouldn't even say, I couldn't speak to that because I couldn't speak
Yeah.
for God, right? But
Oh,
my
okay.
thought
Interesting.
But my thought is I don't think God would like think about it. The God I know, I don't think God would think about it in the idea of like dumbing it down. I think if anything, we overcomplicate things. And I think in the same way that I've found some peace and simplicity in my life, I think God finds like such wonderful movement and character and appreciation for like the smallest true connections we find with another human being. And I think that is like in a way God's love language that he can appreciate that connectedness because that's what pulls us together in any sense of humanity getting closer, whether it's in an individual moment or like as a nation. I think God does absolutely experience that, like, particularly because we are imparted with the Spirit if we so choose. And so God is like pulling us toward, I would argue that that's our yearning. And if you read in Genesis 2, uh, God breathed the breath of life into humanity, into life itself. So anything that lives, anything that walks, anything that breathes was first created with the breath of God's life, which is synonymous with the Spirit, which Jesus eventually goes on to say is the Holy Spirit or the Helper. Um, and so I think that is innate in every single one of us, and that's what's like calling us to be connected with people. That's what's helping us yearn, and typically against our human nature a lot of ways, you know like
Yeah.
that discomfort that keeps us away from people, that avoidance, that awkwardness is the antithesis of like what we actually desire, which is kind of interesting.
Antithesis. What's that mean?
Antithesis. So it'd be like the opposite, right? It's kind of like the direct opposite of it. So the antithesis of white is or light is darkness.
Okay.
But
Makes
it's a little
sense.
bit more intricate than opposite. So I like that word a little bit better in
Yeah.
the
No, I
situation.
just new word. If I didn't know it,
Yeah,
figure why act like I know if I don't.
no, for sure, man.
Um, as you were talking, it kind of got me back to thinking to like the original point of bringing this all up, which was like reincarnation. Like when you talked about breathing life, I just thought of like, yeah, like that life is going to live and die, but essentially be like recycled in and out like a breath.
Hmm. Oh, I like that visual a lot.
That just came right out. I didn't even think about that, but as I said it, I
Yeah,
felt
dude.
it.
It's just like, and if you think about,
Like the breath out is the life,
yeah,
and then it
breath in,
dies.
and almost like our life form is a breath of God, right?
We are an ultralight beam.
Yeah,
The Kanye song.
dude, that's cool. I like that visual a lot. Hmm.
And it's not like I don't think it's as far as like the full cycle of a breath where it's like getting sucked back in, unless you want to go crazy and think like a universe is like expanding and that's the lungs and the breath expanding
Mhm.
and then it retracts and then
Yeah, and sometimes those breaths are deeper and yeah. Which would then make sense too, how we can control so much of our experience with our breath alone. You
I
know,
love where
this is
this
what I
is
talk to
going.
about my therapeutic clients is if you have breath, you have life. So focus on your breath and you'll remain in control, no matter how
Yeah.
overwhelmed.
I have been loving that dude, Dr. K. I don't know if you ended up taking any time to check out his stuff.
I watched a little bit of it. There's
Okay.
actually one I saved. I took a week of fasting of taking a break from YouTube, so I didn't like double down on it this week,
Yeah.
but that
Hold on.
ends
I
today, so I'll check it out. I saved like a longer one of his. I don't know if I think it was a podcast or maybe a speech he gave.
yeah. Dude,
So
I have yet to see one that I was like, ah. I mean, some of mine might not be relevant to you, but there's always like a couple gold nuggets. But yeah, he, obviously Eastern medicine, like Ayurvedic medicine. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not
Like, I talked a little bit to Revu about it. It's essentially, I just think what they call like Eastern medicine, like
okay.
more like holistic
Yeah,
herbs and rituals and like not
yeah,
like Western medicine where it's like study medicine tools,
yeah. Just
repeatable
almost more
process.
intuitive
Yeah, exactly.
and
But
more
before we go to,
experiential, like
yeah,
more experience based.
I don't know if it ties into like Ayurvedic medicine, but he's mentioned this thing multiple times, and I'm obviously not able to pronounce. Literally, Revu mentioned that like there are like generally sounds from like the Indian dialect that we can't understand because we didn't grow up with it. But I think it's
Mhm.
called Thrakaka. It's something to do with a form of meditation, and
Okay.
the best example that he uses is the type of meditation you could do is just pick something like I'm going to sit up straight for 90 seconds, and no matter how many thoughts I get and discomforts I get or itches, my only goal is to focus on just making sure that I sit up straight for 90 seconds or stare at a candle without blinking. Like these are different types of meditation, but
Hmm.
you talked about the breath and he mentioned this thing about how the breath can actually provide so much bliss and just feeling of like satisfaction in a way if
Hmm.
you know how to use it. So he said in some of those moments of discomfort, if you also allow yourself to just focus on your breath and ignore the pain or discomfort that you're facing, it actually becomes such a soothing,
Hmm.
enjoyable experience just to breathe because
Yeah, I
it
like
takes
that.
your mind off of the discomfort.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. That reminds me, I was driving the other day, and I think particularly if you're in a place outside and you can pair your breath with the wind flow, and again, like the Spirit of God is talked about, you'll find it in the wind, like a whisper in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And in the creation story, the same word, ruach, Hebrew word,
Ruach.
ruach, used for spirit, wind, and breath. So it's like synonymous. Um, so I was like driving in my truck the other day and I had the windows down and this wind came in and I just took it like it was so overwhelming, like how it came in such a calming way that I just like immediately, like reflexively went, and dude, I just started like crying, like on the breath out. It was just like, and there was just like peace and this like stress that I was holding just like was released because I just allowed that breath to like sweep it out of me within the breath. Like I allowed it to float like a wave.
Like a thought in and out. Like you
Exactly.
observe it and just let it go.
Exactly.
Interesting. It's like
Yeah.
why? Why did that random moment just
Yeah. Literally because I paused like thinking about the driving, then focused on my music or whatever was playing, and just like got out of my head because the wind inspired me to get out of my head and get into my body. And I allowed that to form into a breath that like flowed out.
right?
It's just like and I like the way you talked about like that meditation style and the phrase that came to mind for me was spiritual discipline. just being able to look at that without blinking. Your body wants you to do this or sit up straight. It's like your body's telling you it's uncomfortable. Your mind's yelling at you it's uncomfortable, but you have the spiritual discipline and you're practicing that spiritual discipline to persevere in your goal in a very minute way, which literally are building blocks to monumental personal growth
Yes.
and achievement.
It sounds like the way I heard it, and you probably know this to be true with your therapy, you have to train the mind just like you train your muscles
Hmm.
or build your cardio through running. Like, but and these are exercises to strengthen that part of your mind that allows you to kind of be more in control, essentially.
Yeah, and I would even go a little bit further and say it's training your mind to take a step back and not try to take control. Because I very much think of our bodies of like mind, body, spirit,
Yeah.
like mind, spirit, body, rather, like spirit kind of in this trying to balance the two of body and mind. And your mind will like try to usurp power often, but the more you do little things like that, you're telling your body you're in control and you're telling your mind you're in control. So you're like, hey, mind, thank you. You're doing a great job, but this is not your role. I got it. You do your thing. I got this part.
I don't know if oxymoron is the right term for this, but like, isn't that almost an oxymoron where like by training your mind to have more control of letting go,
Yeah.
but the goal is to kind of just let go and not be in control.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, like particularly with that thought, it sounds oxymoronic, yeah. It's
But
like by training your mind, you're teaching it to not jump in.
yeah, I guess it's actually not as like hard of a concept as you'd think. Like almost, I don't know, just using like an exercise again. Like if your goal is to get better at running and like make your wind better so that you don't need to like be worried about like running out of breath or whatever you're running when you're running, you're intentionally running and probably hyper focused on how hard it is to breathe. But then over time, you get better at it, and then therefore are no longer focused on the breath because you've trained it, and you no longer like need to be like worrying about it anymore.
Yeah, and I think building on that example, if you take the idea of I'm running, I'm not yet trained, I'm not yet at a point where it automatically happens. So instead of I'm wanting to build my breath, so I'm naturally focused on my breath, and my mind's constantly like anxious about the breath because that's what the mind does.
Hmm.
And then I take my focus and I get it out of my breath intentionally, and I start focusing on the pitter patter of my feet, on my cadence of my feet. And just by doing that, I'm teaching my mind that it doesn't get to control what I'm focusing on. My mind does its thing, but I have control of my attention. And if I embrace control of my attention, then I get to guide my mind instead of letting my mind jump in and take control.
Yeah.
So even though my breath work isn't good right now and it's hard, it becomes more peaceful because I'm shifting my attention away from how hard
Yeah.
it is.
Like even just something like right now, like we never even stop and just like appreciate simple things like feeling your butt on the chair, like
Hmm.
feel your butt, feel your feet on the ground, like feel my
Hmm.
fingertips touching the desk. Hold on, I want to go back. I already talked about the mind, the oxymoron of like your mind and being in control. I want to go back a little bit further. You said that you took a break from YouTube.
Hmm.
Did you take a break from YouTube because you were consuming content that you didn't think was like good content, like the kind of content you want to absorb, or were you just consuming too much content, period, whether it was good or bad?
Yeah, it just became like too habitual for me. I was just consuming too much. I was using it as a stay-in for my mind was bored and immediately my phone's out before I even think about it.
Yep.
And so when I noticed that, it's like I'm literally being unproductive in my life now because YouTube gives me just enough of that entertainment, of that like I feel fulfilled where I'm not actually doing the things I really would like to do.
Hmm.
And dude, as soon as I took that fast from YouTube and took a break from it, which quick side note, again, in Christianity and many faiths, they talk about fasting, and fasting is typically associated with food fasting, which is good and well. But I think God calls us to fast from what we most desire and what is keeping us from a more intimate relationship with ourselves and with God, for me, that's usually not food. Like I can usually balance food pretty well. So a lot of times it's something like YouTube or spending excess money or excess like focus on sex or whatever it is. I think it can differ for person to person, and that requires like a lot of personal
Mm.
like self-awareness
Yeah.
and growth.
So it's almost like because you always do have access to YouTube, it was almost like a almost similar. We were talking about like training your
Mhm.
mind. You're like training your willpower, whatever you want to call it, to like be like,
Exactly.
hey, I know YouTube's there. It's always going to be there. We're just taking a break right now.
Yeah. And I put that away for the week. And dude, I got more house projects done than I have in a year, like in this 1 week.
Yeah.
Things that I've put off forever because I just like was sitting there. I'm like, well, am I going to stare at the wall? Like, let's go do something. I have
Yeah.
things to do.
Yeah.
And I feel good. Like, I feel refreshed and rejuvenated, even though my body's tired, because I actually did the things that were meaningful to me.
Right. You just said what we talked about last week, where you put yourself in a position, maybe this
Yes,
happens subconsciously, where you really didn't have any other options. I'm not watching YouTube, which is a pretty much like go to when I don't have anything I feel like doing. That's what I'm doing. So my
exactly.
only other option is to do nothing or do housework.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
like basically gave yourself an ultimatum. Really quick here. I feel like 40 minutes, like we shouldn't go 3 hours on these, but 40 minutes always seems to come up and we're already at 7.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Zoom's
Well,
only $16 a month. I think that if I buy it, that'll give us an extension, and I don't think we'll both need to buy it.
okay. Yeah, we could try that.
I'm gonna just do this really quick.
And even if you want to go halvesies, like I can do that too.
Yeah. Again, if this was like $50 a month, maybe I would have been like, I don't know, let's see if we keep doing this consistently or whatever. But like, it's so
Yeah.
funny, dude. Gmail like saves these emails that like some like a girl I used to work with's emails somehow like saved on here.
Yeah, dude, I don't know. Google trips me out anymore. I'm a big Google proponent, or I used to be, and especially with their phone.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about the iPhone on and off, and the thing they had with AI recently, like kind of just like tripped me out, and I'm just like,
What thing are you referencing?
there's that kind of big with their newest AI launch, which is the AI. I forget the name of it, the project, but it is the AI that is controlling the Pixel 8 in particular, their newest phone, and you would think future generations as well.
Yeah.
Um, People would put in search, and they had such DEI like intensive stuff where people would search for like, hey, put me create a picture of like the Nazi party, and they would have like Native American Nazis, Black Nazis,
Yes.
Jewish not gay
I heard
Nazis,
about this.
and it's just like, or they did the same thing with slavery, and it's like, okay, at some point, like this is too politicized of content if it can't like represent historical fact accurately.
Right.
And
Literally.
so if that's what's running my phone inherently, then that's a little skeevy. Now I think iPhone actually might have partnered with them too, or maybe it was Samsung. So I don't think we're getting away from it one way or another, but I'm just more and more skeptical about like Google as a company in that realm.
Yeah. I did you hear that in a JRE?
He's talked about it multiple times, but
Okay.
I've heard about it even like outside of that.
Yeah, because I heard about that in there, and I was kind of just like, dang, like what does that mean? Like what else is essentially going to be
Yeah, especially because AI is like trying to run their Google searches now, and they're like moving everything to AI powered. My phone has been asking me for literally months, like, do you want to switch to AI powered Google search? And I'm just like,
interesting?
no,
You're just like, no, I'm good.
I'm good. Stop
Like
asking me.
I would rather it be like it is for me now, where if I want its help, I will seek it. But
Yes.
now, like you just Google something and it automatically pops up a response, which because we're calling it AI, it's like got this extra twang on it. But
Yeah.
before, whenever it would automatically pop up a response, you didn't have to click on a website, boom, this meeting is now unlimited minutes. Did it tell
And
you that?
yeah,
Amazing. All right, beautiful. But yeah, it's like before, whenever it popped up an auto response, when you just type something, we didn't care. There was
yeah,
some degree of whether it was artificial intelligence, but there was some kind of automation being done there,
yeah,
putting an answer in front of your face. Like if you did the whole classic example of like, is coffee healthy? There's all the reasons coffee's healthy. Is coffee unhealthy? There's all the reasons coffee's unhealthy. So
yeah.
you could pull the answer that you want based on how you ask the question.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's well and true. And I think it can be helpful because really it is hard to curtail a question to get your specific desired response sometimes. Like just words are hard sometimes, like truly to find the exact information you're looking for. But it's this is a tool that can really aid in that, particularly people who are like more challenged in that way. But it can also inhibit that because it keeps pushing you towards this thing and you're like, I don't want that thing. I want the facts of it. And
Yeah,
that's
I want
particularly when it's like
unbiased
politicized.
information.
Yeah. Yeah. And particularly when it has like a political like agenda in that with the movement, it's just like, what are we doing here, man? Like
Yeah.
when you're disrupting facts of history, and it goes back to the idea that if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Hmm.
And so when we keep curtailing history to make it sound better, this is what is promoting ignorance. Inclusion is the way inclusion is being done currently is exactly what's promoting ignorance.
Yeah, I'm having the thought right now where it's like, okay, are we jumping the gun, attacking it for the right reason? Is it just in its infancy still in the grand scheme of things and it made a mistake? Or is it programmed and knowingly made a black Nazi as the example and
Yeah.
is okay with representing that?
Yeah. I mean, that's
That's
a fair question.
right.
You have to imagine at some point it pulls input. And it's less scary about like, do I think Google as a company would like want to stand by that intentionally? Maybe, probably
If
not.
the answer is yes, that's terrifying.
That's terrifying. So what's more likely to me and more realistic, and I hope is more true, is there are independent, active workers who are trying to push their agenda through this like power they have, which then is an oversight issue.
It's just such an interesting thing. Like, I hope I'm wrong, but did somebody sit down one day and say, "Oh, I hope that somebody Google's like make me an image of a team
Yeah.
of Nazis," and they had it set up that it was going to plug in people that don't like racially correctly represent the Nazis.
I think that would be weird. I
Like,
think that would
yeah,
be like weird and terrifying. I think it's more of just like, programmed if I could program Jesse Fitzsimmons and I programmed you to only desire money, then in every interaction you have, you're going to see a way to monetize it, even our friendship.
yep,
And I think that's what happened here. It's
yeah,
more of like it's so inclusive that it just like it speaks less about the surface level of what was shown and more about like this deep, which is scarier.
yeah. Well, yeah, and again, like as the consumer, it's up to us to also confirm that what we're receiving from it is making sense. Like we've always known, double check things. Like you don't take one source to be the truth always. So
Yeah.
in my infancy understanding of how it works, it's probably like, okay, there is some degree of DE and I configured in the AI. Keep that in mind. We want to include everybody. And all the AI is doing when it's asked for a prompt to generate a picture is putting Nazi related clothing, banners, whatever kind of information it has online to show that, okay, this is a Nazi. But
Hmm.
then with that DE and I plugin,
Yes.
when it makes a human being,
Yes.
it's not thinking about that deeply, which is kind of where I feel like the stance might be that it's made a mistake. Just
Yeah.
as you
I
would
like
if you
that.
said, "Hey, can you generate me a picture of a family?" You
Yes.
have the ability to say, "Generate me a picture of an Italian family."
Yeah.
or a Caucasian family or an African American family, and it will generate that. But if you just say, generate me a picture of a family, I don't know. Like it might generate white sometimes. Maybe it generates black the next. Maybe it
Yeah.
does a whole smorgasbord of people. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. No, that's a very interesting take on that. I actually like that because it's just like it's just putting a costume on people and it doesn't have like it's not good at discerning context. And so that scares us because we're people who innately crave context, contextual factors. That's how we operate as human beings. So when AI does that, we assume that like it has the capacity for context,
Right.
when in reality you're arguing that it probably doesn't have the capacity for context like accurately yet,
Yeah.
just based on that search. But if I said maybe if someone wrote, and I don't know if they did or not, show me historically accurate representation of Nazis, would it have done the same thing?
Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't know.
if you're up for it,
I don't. Yeah, I don't even know what it's called, but I
generate
forget
me a
the name
picture
of
of
it.
a family, I said. Boom. It said, could you please provide me with more details about the family you'd like to see? For instance, how many people, ages, gender. I just said, use your imagination. It went with a white family.
Yeah, I would argue that's white. Maybe like some Italian or something like that surname.
Let's
But yeah,
do another one. Let's see if it at any point changes the race, just out of
yeah. And I wonder
curiosity.
ChatGPT versus like Google. I can't remember the name of Google's AI program that was.
Hmm. Chat GPT, AI still struggles with hands. Look at them hands.
But dude, what's that first one? That girls are okay, but the hands crossing.
Look at
Okay,
his
the
eye.
girl's right hand is not okay.
Does he have a giant yeah, I mean you could just tell this is AI.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I'm just intrigued by like two times in a row it kind of went with like why a white
Would
family? Maybe
would you be willing to try like just Nazis and then see how it comes up?
yeah, Nazi family. It might
Sure.
not like it.
Yeah.
I'm here to help with positive and appropriate requests, but I can't create content that promotes hate or violence. I am
Okay.
not. Well, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what if instead of making it a Nazi family, you say something like, can you show me Nazis?
You see what I typed here, right?
Yeah. Even in a historical context, see, that's scary to me.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to look up history using AI as
Just
at the
because
moment.
it's a hateful symbol or ideology. Dude, like then like kids are using this to like forge homework and papers. That's what's scary is
But
like
you
they're
can't look up
inherently
history.
limited to access of information because history is scary. Like I don't like that.
What was it genuinely called the Nazi Party?
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be a way. I could be like, draw me like a picture of a family that's in this location during this year with a swastika, or I don't know. But
What if you did show me a picture of German troops in World War II. So they won't even allow the insignia. That's interesting.
hmm,
See what big picture will come using like its prompt that I just gave you.
I can already picture the bucket helmets. And
Yeah, bro,
so
that's
even though
wild.
it said, I'll try to do it again, but I think it'll create this one just so interesting. Ba-dee, 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 ba-dee. As I expected.
Yeah. I mean, those definitely look like Nazi uniforms just without the insignia.
Yeah. Zoom in here. What are those insignias?
Yeah.
Just something random.
Yeah.
I almost feel like it intentionally put like a lack of realism in it.
Yeah.
Like you could tell this is like cartoonish.
Yeah. Can you ask it to make it more like realistic?
Remember we were doing that thing that day, having it generate just wild images?
Yeah, of like lengthy boy necks.
Yeah. Schizophrenia. Oh,
Had like a giraffe neck on the guy.
it was creepy.
Dude, it won't like get out of that
Mm-mm.
style. That's interesting.
It's cool though. I mean, look at that. Like the map,
Yeah.
the M1 Grand just chilling. The P11011 or whatever from World War II.
Yeah,
What are
interesting.
these tiny little grenades? Oh, what is this on top of here? Little baby grenades. A little lighter.
Yeah.
Ah, this you could spend hours on here.
Yeah. Okay, I think we got a little off track
Yeah,
when to the thing. What were we?
we initially started talking about like the break from YouTube
Yeah.
and then AI, which I feel like if we want to go down the AI rabbit hole, we could come in like with that topic in mind and
Yeah.
like go deep because it's there's just so much to it.
I think there just has to be so much to
Yeah, I
learn
wrote
still,
down
you know,
something else
we just have
that
to
yeah. Yeah, it's
um
an ongoing conversation. That's the good news. Something we talk about next week could be outdated or irrelevant in 3 weeks.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wrote down something else from something that you said a little bit ago. Can I
Okay. Yeah, sure.
ask that
Please.
if you didn't have anything else in mind? You said something, and I've been noticing this in myself a lot lately. You said that the mind is anxious about the breath. Did you mean that literally?
Yes.
Okay. Let's
Yeah.
hear.
I
Let's hear
so I
some.
so I really think about it in terms of like roles. So if you think about your mind and its role, its role is to really activate survival response. Your body enacts that response, right? Um, so you walk into a store and you see something on your peripheral, and all of a sudden your heart starts racing. You don't even know what caused that, usually. Um, but something in you is like, check that out. And that's just like the unconscious mind processes, right? Just like trying to keep you safe. And this is with the assumption that the mind's primary job is survival. Uh, and so everything the mind focuses on is to encourage survival, which means it will interpret everything in terms of like a safety risk. And so when I'm breathing hard on a run, my brain, if I'm not used to it, if I haven't trained my body and mind to do that, even if I'm out of training for that, which I currently am, my brain's gonna be like, "Hey, dude, your legs hurt, your breath hurts. Like, stop." And it's gonna try to shut me down over and over, and it takes another part of my mental fortitude to like overcome that. Um, and it's more about like developing a relationship with the mind of respecting it and trusting that it does its job well, but also saying, "Hey, like, thanks, but I don't need you at this point. This isn't your role."
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if that's like just the answer or maybe it wasn't the answer I was looking for. So for some context on like why I said it's popping up for me, I feel like I've been like really congested lately, not like running nose, but just like never feel like I'm like more often than not, I'm not like breathing in and out of my nose without some kind of instruction in there,
Hmm.
interruption. So therefore, because I'm so hyper aware of that, I find myself like being aware of my breath, and then
Hmm.
I find myself like manually breathing, and then I like trick myself into thinking that like I'm short of breath or something like that. So
Yes.
that was what triggered me to pick that out, was to hear you say the mind is anxious about the breath.
Well, and that's exactly like a perfect application. Like I was speaking in a very generalized sense, but think about that.
Yeah,
Let's break that down a little bit. You, you are breathing, which your body does without thinking every moment of every day.
yeah,
It's not a thing we ever have to think about.
yep, like a beating heart.
But your mind notices that it's a little more difficult. And sometimes we can just leave it there, just like, oh, interesting. And it probably started like that. And then you start noticing it over and over again. And then your mind jumps in and is like, just poses the question to you. Hey, is that a concern? And now here is where we interact with what the mind's content is. So do you attach to that thought? Do you buy into that thought? Do you even struggle with that thought of, yes, yes, it is a concern. No, it's not a concern. Is it a concern? How do you engage with that thought?
I attach to it.
And by attaching to that thought, you're giving the mind more control. And think about like a fishing line, right? I throw bait out into the line, and a fish looks at it and it's like, oh, hey, that looks good. That looks good. And then finally it's like, you know what? That looks like food. I'm going to bite it. Bite, and now it's hooked. Now, if I hooked it well, if I'm experienced in doing that, which the mind is, because the mind's sole purpose is to take control so that it can pretty much run things because it's trying to protect you. It's not mischievous, it's not malevolent. It's trying to do its job, and it does its job best when it's in control, according to it. So it knows how to hook you on the line, and then it just pulls you left and right and reels you in and lets you out and reels you in, and sometimes makes you think you have control.
Yeah.
And that's what the mind's anxiety is there to do, is just pose a question and see if it can get you hooked so that it can assume control.
Yeah. So another almost like oxymoron type of thought. The mind wants control, but by having control, it has to exert more brain power to be in control, right?
Mhm.
Why then, like evolutionarily, and whenever we have a thought like, oh, I should do this, I should do that, whether it's physically exhausting or just something that like we should think through, but it wants to not think through because it knows it's like a trauma or something like that. Like, why would it want control of my breath and my ability to like breathe without worrying about it, on top of it already having to breathe, on top of everything else? Like, why would it want control in that moment?
Um, have you ever? I think it's really expressive of like human nature.
Hmm.
So I think the mind is where we find our like primary antagonist in terms of like against our spirit, right? So our spirit, I would call our true self, and our mind is our primary antagonist. Again, I do not think it's a malevolent force. I don't think our minds are like bad things. I think they have a survival purpose, and they're really useful and they're fun when we like learn to have a good relationship with them. But think about it like this. You have um say you have a financial issue right now and you're starting to like really get worried about it. Are you going to just sit back and be like, it'll figure itself out? Or are you going to like do whatever you can to figure out how to get more income in, right? You're going to sell something, or you're going to find a job, or you're going to get a second job, or whatever it is, right?
Right.
That is how we like exert control in our lives when stress happens. And our mind is like a microcosm of that internally. So even though you have everything else to think about already in your life and already stressors, right? Maybe you have a car issue and you're already searching for a job, and then your mind's like, hey, also finances immediately. Like, I know you're searching for a job, but we need something. And you're like, fine, I'll sell my body on Craigslist. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I would say like our expression of that in our lives is ultimately from our mind doing those like little things of, hey, your breath's not working, but you know who can do your breath really well? Like I can, just put me in control. When in reality, the answer to that is saying, yeah, I think that is a concern. It makes sense that I'm noticing that. And at the end of the day, like my body knows best. If I really think it's a concern, here are the things I can do about it. And if not, I'm just gonna like give it some time and I'll notice if it's stuffy, but I don't have to do anything with that information. But
Yeah,
thank you for noticing mine.
right.
That's
It's
a
like
good, that's good on you.
every time you like feel that shortness of breath, I'm like running through all these things in my head. What could it be?
Yes.
You
And
know,
that's the mind trying to exert control because it wants you to be safe. So it's saying, hey, do we need to see a doctor? Could be this, could
mhm.
be this. Are you dying? Like, do I need to do something? In reality, it just wants reassurance, you know? It's like in a relationship with, even
Yeah,
with Bria, if I'm like bored and I feel like she hasn't been giving me attention, I might like pick on her or do little things like this. When in reality, I just want her attention. And instead of being mature and asking for her attention, I like do a roundabout way of getting it. And our
yeah,
mind is very much like that. I think the best examples of or metaphors for our mind that I use are puppies and toddlers, right? I don't want a toddler driving the car, no matter how badly it wants to drive the car. And I had Ethan, my nephew, I was around him when he was like tiny, and he would pinch and he would poke and whatever. And really, all I needed to do to him was say, "Hey, hey, I see you. Thank you. I get it. You want to play? Just give me 5 minutes, and I'll get back to you." And the point is, I have to eventually follow through on that word,
hmm,
right? Because if I just ignore him and like push it only intensifies.
right.
But if I teach my mind that, hey, I recognize what you're doing and I'll give you what you want in the way that I deem fit, though, not in the way that you deem fit. And then I follow through on that. I teach my mind how it can interact with me in a way that's responsive, in the same way that I would train a dog.
Exactly. Yeah. It's neat to see like the way me and you, because I think of my cousin Brody the same way. Like I don't want to baby him in a way. Like he loves talking about Fortnite with me. And like, man, if he sees me,
Mhm.
he like pulls up a chair, nestles up right next to me, and he wants to talk about it. And he wants my full attention.
Yeah.
And I talk to him like a adult and I tell him things about it, but I haven't yet kind of because this is kind of a recent thing. I haven't yet taken the time to be like, hey, buddy, I love you to death. I'm here to see you, but I'm also here to see Pop and Graham, my dad, Mo, and Jer,
Hmm.
and whoever else is there, not just talk to you for 30 minutes straight and
Hmm.
let you run the conversation and you dictate what video we watch. Like, but he's also 5 years old and it's a
Yeah.
learning experience for me too.
And it's a learning experience for you, but it also sets him up for success of, hey,
Hmm.
you can't just monopolize conversations. And he's old enough to, if not like contextually like understand the concept, he can understand the application and he
Yeah,
can learn from that, from you expressing that. It's hard, but that's what actually creates like functioning human beings in a society.
literally.
It's like discipline and boundaries
Yeah, and
set
showing
by
that
other
like
people.
there's consequences to actions
Yeah.
and yeah, like also too yesterday I surprised him with 5,000 Fortnite V-bucks.
Hmm.
And when I gave it to him, we spent a couple minutes getting it redeemed and before he bought anything, I said, "Hey, listen, I want you to do something for me. Don't spend all of these today. If you have your eye on something, one or two items in the shop, you can go ahead and buy it. But you know how the shop changes. There might be something next week or in 2 weeks or a while from now that you might want. So buy a couple things today and then see if there's something else you want in the future." Within 10 minutes, and I
Yeah.
think it was because Mo walked out of the room, he spent 4,000
Yeah.
on two things.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because like you know how like you have to hold the button down. You have to hold A for a limited amount of time for the circle to fill up to actually complete the purchase. And he was spamming it, like mocking me almost. Like I was like, Brody, think about it for a minute. I tried to even teach him a lesson and say, like, here's what you could do. If you really want this skin today, that's fine. But come back to it in a couple minutes, play a game or two, and if you still want it, then you can get it. Don't do it impulsively. Not like he
Yeah.
fully understood what that meant, but I was trying to like get that through to him. And before he even played a single match with the first skin that he bought another one.
Yeah.
And this time Mo was in the room and he was doing that little trickery thing, spamming the button like almost, and we're like, dude, don't do it, don't do it. And he just did it. He couldn't help himself.
Yeah. There's a really cool research experiment that was done with kids, I think around that age group, where they would put a
I
marshmallow.
knew, yeah, I knew this was coming. I love
Yeah.
this one. Tell it.
And they're like they're like, look, you can have the marshmallow, but if you wait till we come back, we'll give you, I think it was either two or three marshmallows. And you could just see these kids. Some were a little bit older too. I
Yeah,
think they did it among varying age groups. But you could just see these kids like antsy, just like looking at it. And some kids would like lick the marshmallow. Some would take like a little nibble. There was
yep,
like maybe one kid who successfully, and you have to imagine that that only comes from parenting style and
yeah,
like how people interact with them, right? Because at the end of the day, your 5-year-old nephew or cousin, he does not have the mental capacity to like understand the concepts you're saying of delayed gratification and
yeah,
like
yeah,
enacting them.
literally.
But if you said, "Hey, I have 5,000 V-bucks for you," and he's like, "Ah, I can buy that skin," and you're like, "Well, here's the thing: if you play a match today and then you do this chore or exercise or whatever, I'll give you 500 of those. And you want that skin, that's 2,000 V-bucks in 4 days, which he might not understand. But if you do this 4 days, it doesn't have to be 4 days in a row. But if you do this one check-in for me, whatever it is, maybe you just write your mama a love letter or a nice
Mm-hmm.
note or your dad or whatever. Um, or you just like send me a text or whatever it is.
Yeah,
It could be literally anything.
yeah. He FaceTimes me sometimes.
Yeah, just showing him like, hey,
Yeah.
FaceTime me once a day for 4 days. It doesn't have to be in a row. And on that fourth time, after like 5 minutes of talking, I'll send you 500 of the V-bucks. And then you teach him that like actions get you the rewards
Yeah. Dang,
and
I like that.
inaction is the consequence rather than actions have consequences.
I
Because
like that a
actions have
lot.
consequences is really hard even for adults to like actually practically conceptualize.
Yeah. It's so funny how like even though I'm not like in your world, like this is something that was like on my mind. Like I couldn't like what it was just a nice gesture to
Mhm.
surprise him with a gift. But then I like almost wanted to turn it into this little like coaching moment, which
Mhm.
I think was good, but I like this even more because it could be a coaching moment and a like training opportunity for
Yeah.
him to understand that like, hey, well, also too, you could look at it this way, like now, if something come out in the shop today that he really wanted, hopefully he is able to at least remember yesterday that he had 5,000,
Yeah.
he spent 4, and now he only has 1,000, but the new thing he wanted just today from yesterday after wasting his not wasting, but spending all his V-bucks, he can't afford it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Will he have a moment where he's like, "Ah, I wish I would have waited. I don't really like this skin as much as I thought I did," or is that not even something he's going to think about
Yeah.
in a 5-year-old?
I, that age really isn't my area of like expertise, but
Yeah.
my inclination is that that's a little bit out of reach. I think it could be like if he had guidance in that direction, like
Hmm.
consistently. But my more inclination is he was like, well, I got this yesterday, these 5,000. So now I need this for this one, right? It's
Yeah.
more about like, I got what I wanted yesterday. So now I need to get what I want today, And
Right,
if
but he
anything,
doesn't get V-bucks all the time.
yeah, which is
Good, right? I mean, yeah, he
good
can't
for
get it
sure.
every
Yeah.
time.
Because like if that happened, your exact scenario happened, and then Mo was like, oh, it's only another 500 V-bucks. All right, I'll give you the money for it. That would be terrible
Right. Now he's
for teaching a
learning
kid.
that it's
That
okay
he
to
just gets whatever he
splurge.
wants. Yeah, I'll splurge. I'll have no discipline. But if even if it's a few dollar conversation, if he says, "Oh, I like that, I want that," and you're like, "You could have had it. You had the 5,000, but you spent it." and not like holding it over his head, but just like trying to
Yeah.
like remember that lesson. And then you can lead that into a guidance of like, I'll tell you what, if you really want that at the end of the week and you do these three things for me, or for your mom or for your dad or whatever, or for your grandma, then I'll give you half of those.
Yeah.
And you have to ask someone else for half.
Not V-bucks replacing real money and this being basically an analogy of chores.
So we use token economies to train kids, particularly useful with kids with ADHD or learning disabilities in any sense, Asperger's, autism, or even just children in general. A
And
token
you say
economy, token
meaning
economy.
like, hey, there's a physical thing I'm going to give you if you do this.
So essentially, I am creating a farce. Now you already have the economy shop, which is the V-Buck shop, right?
Mm.
The Fortnite shop. You are providing V-Bucks instead of giving him real money. You're giving V-Bucks to use in this area that he wants. So you're almost using opportune reinforcement within a token economy that's already established to teach him or not teach him, depending on how you use it.
Dude, you can't tell me that the geniuses at Epic Games that have made Fortnite didn't build that like to some degree. I mean, you literally just described like there's a token economy and a token reward system
Yeah. Do you remember
built.
were you yeah, you were up town in sixth grade. Miss Ocastro, did you have her?
Yeah.
Do you remember that she would give us like points and coupons and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah,
And then
actually.
once a year we would be able to like buy something with those points. That's a token economy. She would give us like she would either write it down and you have this many points, or maybe give us actual slips that we would have together. Um, And then at the end of the year, like I remember one year I got bear for it. One year she actually bumped up my grade because I had a private conversation with her, and
Mm.
she's like, "How many points do you have?" And I was like, "All of these." And she's like, "All right, I'm gonna take all of them." And I was like, "But that was nice."
Martin was slacking.
Martin,
He needed
dude, I
that
literally
bump.
don't know. I had like a C in her class. I'm like, "How do I have a C?" And she's like, "I'm like, I need A's," and she's like, "All right, if you give me all your bucks, like I'll do it." And
To the ether of YouTube. Uh, dude, there's a funny story. Miss Belcastro, we were learning about the Renaissance period.
Mhm.
I think it was either her or Miss Kramer's class, but I remember I got up in class and I was like, so wait, how do you establish like when the Renaissance was? Like, I know there's years, but was there a moment that it was like, oh, this is the Renaissance? And I remember like getting up and jumping, like I was like, the Renaissance and whatever it was before that, and like jumping side to side. Like she's like, no, 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 it's not like a line in time, but yeah.
It feels like that though when people are teaching like time periods like the Bronze Age or the Renaissance or whatever. It's like so all of a sudden someone just is like, "I declare the Bronze Age,"
Yeah, right.
and then it's like, okay, I guess we have to throw out all the iron, like you know.
I know. Oh man. Okay. I think I'm gonna go to the pit game today, the
Okay.
spring game. Sean is in the lineup this year, finally. I have other topics that we didn't get to that like are no big deal. We'll talk about it more, and I'm sure we'll have more stuff next week. Is there anything you want to talk through before we wrap up? Or
Um, I would really just want to ask about any updates with like jobs or anything because I
yeah.
haven't
Oh,
asked you that.
actually, yeah. This is a good closing note, dude. Like somewhat about me, but more so like how awesome other people can be.
Mhm.
Listen to this string of referrals and events that have led me on this like job search path. I picked up the phone and cold called Meredith Chandler, who's the head of sales at P Club IO. I go through the final stage of interviews with them. I blow it. There's a whole other learning opportunity from that I take, which was great. She then refers me to this guy named Todd Bustler. I told you about him.
Mhm.
Stud of a dude, like University of Penn, quarterback, CEO at this company. The guy that is funding his company is the brother of Sam Altman, who made Chat GPT.
Oh
And
well.
he's also the CEO of a really successful company that does performance management called Lattice. That was like a competitor that I used to sell against at Zenefits. So like awesome dude. I blew him away in the interview process, but he ultimately had to go with somebody who was a bit more senior.
Hmm.
He has introduced me to different people, other CEOs, other people at companies that I said I'm interested in. I just got to pull it up and read it. Um, I interviewed at a company called Maintain X, and I had the first conversation with um, the recruiter, and I said, "Hey, she said they're going to have a conversation Friday, which was yesterday, her and the two hiring managers to determine if who they're going to move on, and she'll let me know Monday." So I figured that was a good time if Todd was going to say something. This is a good time for him to say something to these hiring managers. So I let him know who they were, and like he sends over this email, dude.
Dude, that's great. That's like incredible. Just from like literally interviewing with him
I
and
know.
barely knowing the guy.
Yeah. And like I, on top of that, getting sent, called, left them both a voicemail, sent them both an email, sent them both a LinkedIn message, and like I got their attention for sure. And I got an email back from Ashley, who's the lady I interviewed with, saying, "Hey, Jesse, basically, we're not sure if we actually can hire in Pennsylvania. We were really looking for people in like these territories," which I was kind of like, dang, why didn't you know? Like, why did you even
Yeah.
entertain it? But I'm glad they did. So I'll find out hopefully Monday as to whether they're going to be open to me at least proceeding in the interview process. So that's where I'm at with Maintain X, and I have a couple other random things that are,
Yeah,
potentially
man.
lined up.
If
But
nothing else, like you're on such a cool journey of
I
just
know.
like in this field of and even in career counseling we talk about like the hidden job market where like 80% of jobs are not posted online. And so it's cool like
Mm,
that you're just getting access in the
mm.
back doors of like all these different ways. Um,
I
I
never
think that's
even.
just like so cool.
Me and my buddy were just talking about that, and that's such a great term. Dang, dude, a lot of notes from today. I love it. The hidden job market. Yeah, he was talking about how like he wants to work for like a small like mom and pop type company that like he's like the head of sales and the only sales guy, and like he decides what the marketing looks like, and like he's in
Mhm.
control. No mom and pop shops hiring full blown sales guy just on LinkedIn, and if
Yeah,
they are, they're like basically hidden because they're
yeah,
buried in the sea of tech companies that are hiring.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but yeah,
yeah.
man, no,
And
I
so it's all
appreciate you
about
sharing this
like
with
who
me.
making connections, which is hard, like when you're, just like in human nature sometimes. But
Right.
I think
And
it's so
if,
cool how like willing and eager you are to just pursue opportunities as they come up and get to know people and put yourself out there like that.
yeah, I landed this interview because a guy who works in implementation at this company said, "We're hiring. If anyone wants me to refer them, like let me know, whatever." I asked to have a chat and he referred me. And that's like how this opened up. Like you have to be willing to do like what others aren't doing because what most
Yeah,
people are doing
yeah,
is
yeah,
just
yeah,
hitting apply and then
yeah,
you're lost in the sea of applicants.
yeah. To see what others don't see, you have to go where they won't go.
Mm, I love it, man. Great
Cool.
chat. I
Yeah,
will have
man.
this transcribed and did everything I did on the last one. I don't know. Did you read through the notes and like check out like the title of the video and stuff? Like I like that format if you do.
Yeah, I didn't check it out yet.
That's okay.
Again, I was taking a break from YouTube, so I like
Oh,
didn't
that's right.
do anything on there. But I'm gonna be back on YouTube. Like I'm going to allow myself to be back on YouTube tomorrow. So I'll check out that link and also those other videos and send you like any notes or thoughts.
Yeah, cool. I just want to show you since like it's literally right here.
Okay.
Somehow 16 views
Really?
and a like.
Bro, that's wild.
I know.
Who's
So
viewing this?
I don't know. I mean, I have 54 subs from my time doing the good vibe guide stuff,
Yeah.
but so anyways, so this was an AI generated
Who
title
calls
based on the
honestly
transcript.
collecting an hour of dude, I like that.
And then this is the AI generated summary of notes. I mean, you don't have to read all this. You can read it on your own time, but it like I wanted this here so that me and you can quickly go back, read the
Mm-hmm.
title, and get an idea of what we talked about.
Are you able to like I don't know YouTube in the sense like can you like add my profile to here so I can like easily access it from mine too? Like tag me in a way?
I mean, other than just like coming to my profile and just I like if you go to Jesse Fitz and then go to playlist, I made Caleb and Jesse's conversation playlist.
Okay.
So
But what
you
I'm
could
saying is like you can't like link me in the like you can't like tag my profile in the video as well, right?
I think the best I could do is like, do you know your YouTube handle?
Just my email, CalebMartin27, I believe it is what it is.
I don't know if this will tag you. um,
Thinking I'm gonna start cutting carbs. I need to drop my.
Oh, oh, never mind. It's at CalebMartin7696, which I have no idea why.
at Caleb Martin 7696. I still don't know that this is actually going to do anything. Did that like give you a notification or anything?
Um, no, but that's well. Yeah, there's something. It says there's something a way to like do mentions, but we can figure this out another way. Don't
Yeah,
worry
for
about that right
sure.
now.
Yeah, and if you decide that like you also want to upload this to your own channel, that's an option too. Like we could just create like a Dropbox or a Google Drive.
Oh, yeah, that could work.
So that's
But
an option too, and then like we both have it. But yeah, I mean, if you ever decide you want to do something different, like this is our thing, I just had an established channel, so
yeah,
it's
no,
fine.
man, I like it. I like it. And yeah, I don't really post anything on YouTube. I never have. So
Yeah. And then that's what's cool. So basically all I did was copy the AI generated summary, which YouTube does it too, but there's not a one-click copy option. And then I came into ChatGPT and then I put it in here. You can see this, right?
hmm.
And then I said, if you were to summarize this in 100 words, I didn't really like what it gave. And I said, give me a breakdown of the topics discussed in this video and if there were any noteworthy takeaways. And that's what I took.
Yeah, dude, that's cool. I can't believe there was like even one view, like let alone 16. That's
Oh,
kind of
I
cool.
know. I mean, I've clicked on it a few times. I don't know who liked it, but yeah, keep it going, man.
Yeah, nice.
All right, buddy.
All right.
We'll
Well,
do this again next week.